Lost Planet is a depiction of what it's like to survive a Canadian winter. You fend off the wildlife and freeze to death only to be revived by a group of rebels who thankfully have a hot cup of joe to spare. You play as Wayne, mech pilot and boy band frontman. Mankind has been colonizing other planets, and in the fight against the alien life forms known as the Acrid, you find yourself on EDN-3, a bit of a lost planet you could say. The Acrid on this planet possess a thermal energy within them that has helped the humans stay alive on this frozen planet by providing them with the warmth needed to boil water and make hot drinks. Humans created a form of mechs called the Vital Suits, or VS, in order to better fight for a well-caffeinated future. While out on an operation, the group Wayne belongs to is attacked by a large and menacing Acrid known only as Green Eye. Unfortunately, Wayne's father Gale is lost in the attack, and after escaping inside of a damaged VS, Wayne is frozen to death. Sorta. He's discovered and revived by a man named Yuri and is told to keep the device on his right arm a secret. We also meet Luca and Rick, and together they plan to eliminate the Acrid hives, and seeing as Wayne is the only capable VS pilot, he offers his services to the cause. It's here that we get our first real taste of gameplay. It's pretty standard fare third-person shooter stuff. You run around, jump in mechs, and generally point your crosshair at things you want to die. You have the ability to use a grappling hook for some basic platforming, but it's a little janky and only really gets used in vertical sections. You go around killing enemies and sucking up their sweet molten nectar in order to keep yourself warm. The thermal energy gauge under your health bar is constantly ticking down, so you need to kill enemies and activate relay points in order to keep yourself from freezing to death. Again. Enemies typically have giant glowing spots on their bodies showing where their weak points are. Weapons are pretty standard for the most part, but the VS mechs also have their own specific types of guns, and they can be mixed and matched to better suit the task at hand. If you want, you can even grab the giant gun on foot, but I feel sorry for Wayne's lower back. After disposing of the first Acrid nest, Yuri sends me on a mission to fight a group of snow pirates called Crimson Unity. You get a good look at the frozen over cities and really see how the Acrid infestation took over. Buildings lie buried in the snow and enemies pop out of everywhere. Dead bodies and the wrecks of past VS mechs are strewn about as I make my way through collapsed bridges, fighting snow pirates along the way. Eventually I find myself in an underground train yard where there are dudes everywhere. Bullets whiz by from every angle, and I start to wonder if the Acrid are actually the infestation here. I come across what appears to be a sort of base, and I immediately start blasting fools with my sniper rifle. Making my way inside the building, I am accosted by two enemy Vital Suits and a cameo appearance from Jumping Flash, as I scramble desperately to get a gun big enough to fight them. Lucky for me, they had just what I was looking for. A portable can opener. Inside I find a PDA and a mention of the name Nevek, which, for some reason, makes Wayne black out. He has a vision of his father talking about the device on his arm known as the Harmonizer, and he's told that if thermal energy is not fed into the device, it will eventually spell its death. Waking up once again attached to the device Yuri used to revive him before, tensions are high as Ruka demands to know why Yuri is using the emergency thermal energy supply to revive Wayne, but he's being vague and Ruka storms out before the next mission begins. This time around we're crossing a large open area, and just as I'm getting accustomed to the VS that turns into a motorcycle, a giant fucking snowworm comes and immediately wrecks my shit. Naturally, I try and fight the thing and die a horrible death. I realize that I'm just wasting my time, so I book it to the next checkpoint where I'm greeted by an enemy VS user with a sweet custom paint job and a bad attitude. I just hide behind the nearest thing that will stop me from turning into Swiss cheese and blast her with all the conveniently placed rocket launchers until she submits and leaves me alone. We then see Yuri talking to some guys from Nevek, and they mention something called the Frontier Project. Wayne confronts Yuri, but is essentially told to shut up and start the next mission. After being carpet bombed by a moth, I make my way underground and fight through corridors of people with rocket launchers, and it's here that the game starts to drag a little bit. The encounters are a bit repetitive, so even though the enemies vary, a lot of the fighting plays out in a very similar way. Hiding behind boxes and blasting fools when they stick their heads out, and jumping into mechs when the bullets rain down. I end up on a platform lift and start riding across the side of a mountain, but before I can even take in the sights, the lift fucking breaks and drops me into a pit. Whipping back around to the top of the mountain, it's time to take out this giant moth. The first part of the fight isn't too bad, but as it gets into critical condition, it just starts bombing you over and over again, but a well-placed rocket takes it out of the sky and it's back to the base. Ruka informs us that Yuri left. She then suggests that it's time to take out Green Eye, and we have a tough climb up the mountain summit ahead of us. It's about here that I just kinda gave up on finding the collectibles, as they didn't really seem to benefit me much, so I just rushed for the next location, gathering as much ammo and thermal energy as I could along the way. I've heard of icicles before, but have you ever heard of wormsicles? The boss fight ahead is kind of a pushover, as she just just essentially shoot his arms until he falls over pathetically and then shoot him in the face. We get a brief moment where Ruka apologizes to Wayne for not trusting him, but the moment is cut short when Basil shows up. She was the mech pilot we fought before, and this time around she's looking for Yuri. Suspecting that Yuri has gone to work for Nevek, she turns and leaves the group as Wayne states that they're just here for Green Eye. Another city level goes by, and it's slowly becoming harder and harder to progress without getting blasted from off screen by a rocket launcher. I opt to just go ham and start taking out as many dudes as I can because I am sick of getting knocked on my ass at this point and slowly taking out turrets, and this stuff is becoming a chore. We find Gale's VS out in a snowbank, and you know what that means. Time for a hot cup of joe. Time to let Ruka and Rick fix it so we can go fuck up Green Eye. The fight begins and I start blasting every weak point I can see on the thing. This VS is really fun to use because it has high mobility, making for a very cinematic fight as I slowly chip away at it. Wayne has some flashbacks and Nevek shows up to open fire on Wayne, damaging his VS in the process. This is Bandero, and he was the man that ordered Wayne's father be shot. Wayne goes into a fit of rage, to which Bandero just responds by laughing at him. Luca gets almost captured, and Wayne jumps on a bike and narrowly gets away with Luca as Bandero takes an interest in the vital suit he left behind. Wayne and Luca return to their mobile base, but it's on fire and Wayne blacks out again, having a vision of his father telling him to stop the Frontier Project at all costs. 1 year passes. Luca and Wayne are forced into guerrilla hit-and-run tactics as they try to locate Rick, who is separated from them after the last encounter. And I really dig this night level. The lighting is really good and it's just action-packed. Unfortunately, everything here is going to blast you on your ass, so there's an explosion at least every 5 seconds. I opted to go the sniper route and made my way through the area. Oh hey, Rick is here coincidentally. Time to have a coffee with the gang. Fuck yeah! We find out that Rick was helped by Basil when they originally got separated and he made his way here. Turns out, she was never after Yuri in the first place, but instead his father, Ivan Solotov. Rick mentions Basil is checking out a research facility and Wayne decides to follow her. Making my way through another dark, snowy level and killing a ton of Acrid along the way, I enter the facility where Basil should be. I bribe the guard with my rocket launcher in order to gain access and see a ton of laser drones everywhere. Stealth works for about 15 seconds until I'm thrown into a wide-scale fight and everyone starts shooting at me. There's a mini-boss with a couple of small spider tanks, and I prove that the VS shotgun is fundamentally broken and the fight ends quite quickly. I meet up with a suspicious-looking character and he pulls a gun on me. Basil backs me up and he reveals that he's looking for information on the Frontier Project, and slow-motion CQCs Wayne's gun out of his hand and takes a shot at Basil. She blocks it with her wrist and they take turns beating the piss out of him before stealing his iPhone. Presumably after torturing this man, we found out his name is Joe and he works for Nevek. The PDA contains information on the Frontier Project and its projected motive. They intend to heat the planet while killing the Acrid, and among the list of researchers involved, Yuri is at the head of the project. We also find out about the volcano dome and where the project is currently underway, and Wayne opts to cross the canyons and crash the party. Time to jump in a spider tank and start cruising. Hey, why is my thermal energy going down in here? This place looks a hell of a lot warmer than the places we usually frequent. Whatever. Another cutscene ensues where we free Joe in exchange for guiding us through the volcano zone. Being at gunpoint, he can hardly say no to a deal like that. Wayne asks Basil about the device on his arm, and after mentioning Gale's name, we find out that he once saved Basil from the Acrid and gave her a harmonizer similar to Wayne's. Her husband was along with Gale when they were both killed by Solotov's betrayal. Basil mentions that Wayne's harmonizer could be the key to something, but it's probably not operating correctly. She also reveals that Wayne's been frozen for 30 years and that the harmonizer slows the aging process. He takes it pretty well, actually. Luca says that she and Joe found a route through the volcano zone, and we're on our way. Now, up until this point, I am absolutely dominating these enemies. I am ripping through them with ruthless efficiency and only blowing myself up occasionally. I am powered on pure adrenaline, and the only thing stopping my rampage is a coffee break with the boys. I even fought a snowworm back at the beginning of the game just because I fucking could. Everything was going great and I was on good pace to wreck everything in this level. Until he showed up. Well, that was fun. Here we meet Eisenberg, who apparently oversees Nevik's operation on this planet. He monologues for a little while about the Frontier project, and then Wayne tries to cap him. Turns out, he's a hologram, but Wayne puts a few more shots into him just to be sure. Without a clear motive, the team feels lost, but Joe finishes up his Capri Sun and shows a map of the canyon under a different filter to find the lower canyon area, which contains a large supply of thermal energy, the perfect jumpstart to the Frontier project. The homing laser is pretty neat and makes this area a lot easier to get through. Infinite ammo is always a plus. Sadly, fighting enemy vital suits isn't as fun as fighting Acrid, and the game knows it, so I end up in a mineshaft looking place and there's Acrid everywhere. This boss battle is pretty easy, but it just goes to show how entertaining it can be in this game to blow off the limbs of enemies and blast them with some overpowered weaponry. Bandero shows up again and continues to show an interest in Wayne's harmonizer. He plugs Wayne in the leg and talks down to him a bit before Joe shows up and pops the vital suits with a sniper rifle. Joe was still working with Nevik, but killing Wayne wasn't part of the deal. Nevik lied to Joe and said the Frontier project would bring about the warming process of the planet, but didn't mention that it would kill every living being in the process. As a message blares over the loudspeaker about evacuation of the planet, Rick shows up and jumps on the rifle, covering Joe and Wayne so they can make their escape. Back at the base, Joe tries to make amends for his actions and they laugh it off. The next plan of attack is on the orbital elevator, and the fastest route is straight through an Acrid hive. Well, it wouldn't be the first time I've had to carve a path, so away we go. There isn't really much to this mission. It's pretty linear and samey looking. The boss, however, is pretty neat. Naturally, I waste a ton of ammo before figuring out that you need to follow the broken tentacles to the weak point, and then the rest of it is easy. Finally making it to the Nevik facility, Joe hooks us up with a little disc-looking thing and says it's a gift from Yuri. Conveniently, they're holding him on the way to the orbital elevator, and the gang splits up again. We finally get to fight Bandero. A little pre-battle banter, and it's time to kick ass. I give him the business end of my shotgun, and he goes down like a chump. I can only imagine his two little front ponytails obscured his vision. Luca finds Yuri, but he's in rough shape, so Wayne jumps in his father's whip and Basil shows up to sacrifice herself to buy him more time. Turns out the disc Yuri gave us is an attachment for Wayne's harmonizer that unlocks the full potential of Gale's VS, but Wayne may fully lose his memory in the process. Wayne just straight up doesn't care and wants to pilot his dad's cool-ass anime mech. Oh hell yeah, I get sword arms and I can fly? Joe disables the Frontier project and it's time to face off against Eisenberg. The fight starts off by opening their mechs to shit-talk each other, and Wayne has zero chill and just straight up busts a cap, but he misses, so they start fighting with robots instead. This fight takes a while. You just kind of float around and get shot from everywhere while trying to deal enough damage before you inevitably get bombarded. Those laser drones are probably the most annoying part of this fight, and I died quite a few times before I figured it out. After finally putting him down, Wayne starts to lose his memory, and he has a final confrontation with Eisenberg where he checks one more time to see if he's a hologram. 1 year later, Luca is continuing Yuri's research with Rick and slowly warming the planet. She just wishes that Wayne could be here to see this. Oh wait, there he is. Having lost all of his memories, he doesn't recognize her and she attempts to restart their friendship as the credits begin to roll. Lost Planet is an interesting game. It comes off as a generic third-person shooter, but has a lot of endearing qualities to it that make it feel like its own little experience. The vital suits are fun to pilot, and mixing and matching the different weapons is fun to experiment with. It can be pretty stiff at times, and there's definitely some things that could use some improvements like the grappling hook, but it functions well enough that it doesn't ever detract from the gameplay. The environments are harsh and barren, making EDN 3 feel like a foreboding place, and there's some genuinely cool areas that tell a bit of the planet's history through the level layouts. I just feel as though the story moves a bit too quickly and there's too many subplots going on without any real satisfying conclusions. I'd say it's worth it to give Lost Planet a shot, as it goes for fairly cheap nowadays. There's other games in the franchise, but for me the first one will always be the most iconic. If you like mech games and can deal with a few janky aspects, this is a quick playthrough that can burn through a few hours like my health recovery burns through my thermal energy.